Hello, MGTOW. Hello, men. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. I want to read a little bit from Wikipedia concerning the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? I'm sure you're all familiar with it, right? Because it's such a great popular name. But seriously, this was pointed out to me by Ground Pounder 24, and a couple of other people have pointed me towards it, but I just didn't bother to read it. But having read it, I now want to, read it to you guys because they really should have named it the I'm better than you syndrome, because then their theory would have been a lot more popular. So I'm renaming this the I'm better than you theory. And I want to read a little bit from Wikipedia concerning this. And it is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Maybe Freddy Krueger. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which relatively unskilled persons suffer illusionary superiority, mistakenly assessing their ability to be much higher than it really is. Dunning and Kruger attributed this bias to a metacognitive inability of the unskilled to recognize their own ineptitude and evaluate their own ability accordingly. Their research also suggests corollaries. Highly skilled individuals may underestimate their relative competence and may erroneously assume that tasks which are easy for them are also easy for others. The bias was first experimentally observed by David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University in 1999. They postulated that the effect is the result of internal illusion in the unskilled and external misperception in the skilled. The miscalibration of the incompetent stems from an error about the self, whereas the miscalibration of the highly competent stems from an error about others. That's very interesting, isn't it? And this would explain why women are running around acting like they know what they're doing, even though they pretty much fail at everything. And, we've got all these problems and troubles all through our economy, and they just don't shut up about how great they are, and they don't shut up about what idiots the men are. And the men are walking around like, oh yeah, okay, and everything's falling apart. It's ridiculous. So, continuing on. Original study. The phenomenon was first experimentally observed in a series of experiments by David Dunning and Justin Kruger of the Department of Psychology at Cornell University in 1999. The study was inspired by the case of MacArthur Wheeler, a man who robbed two banks after covering his face with lemon juice in the mistaken belief that, because lemon juice is usable as invisible ink, it would prevent his face from being recorded on the surveillance cameras. The authors noted that earlier studies suggested that ignorance of standards of performance lies behind a great deal of incorrect self-assessment of competence. Ignorance of standards of performance. Or they just ignore the standards. The pattern of overestimating competence was seen in studies of skills as diverse as reading comprehension, practicing medicine, operating a motor vehicle, and playing a game, such as chess or tennis. Dunning and Kruger proposed that for a given skill, incompetent people will fail to recognize their own lack of skill, fail to recognize the extent of their inadequacy, fail to accurately gauge skill in others, recognize and acknowledge their own lack of skill only after they are exposed to training for that skill. Dunning has since drawn an analogy. The anognosis of everyday life, it's the first time I've used that word, people, with a condition in which a person who experiences a physical disability because of brain injury seems unaware of or denies the existence of the disability, even for dramatic impairments such as blindness or paralysis. If you're incompetent, you can't know you're incompetent. The skills you need to produce a right answer are exactly the skills you need to recognize what a right answer is. So there it is. And don't we see this all the time? The person doesn't even recognize what an idiot they are. And they just keep on arguing these erroneous beliefs, and you can't get through to them. They don't recognize the fact that they're not even arguing. They're just insulting and attacking and belittling people, with subjective, anecdotal data. And they're just off to the races with it. It's amazing. And isn't it amazing, the idea of people like denying something like blindness or paralysis and assuming abilities in things like medicine? That's really frightening. So apparently the stupid people don't even know how stupid they are. The incompetent people don't even know how incompetent they are. And as I said, doesn't it really feel that way when you're dealing with like some middle-level management person that's just giving you a hard time, or some protester that wants something that they haven't earned, and the fact that you don't want to buy into the idea that you need to take care of them, they're going to get all upset about that. Right? It's disgusting. They don't even recognize how disgusting it is. Reading some more. Supporting studies. Dunning-Kruger set out to test these hypotheses on Cornell undergraduates in psychology courses. In a series of studies, they examined students' self-assessment of logical reasoning skills, grammatical skills, and humor. After being shown their test scores, the students were asked to estimate their own rank in the class. The competent group estimated their rank accurately, while the incompetent group overestimated theirs. In other words, students who were about to get D's and F's thought they had turned in B or better work. As Dunning-Kruger noted, across 4 studies, the authors found that participants scoring in the bottom quartile on tests of humor, grammar, and logic grossly overestimated their performance and ability, although test scores put them in the 12th percentile. They estimated themselves to be in the 62nd. Meanwhile, students of high ability tended to underestimate their relative competence. Roughly, participants who found tasks to be easy erroneously presumed that the tasks also must be easy for others. In other words, they assumed others were as competent, if not more competent, than themselves. A follow-up study reported by the same paper suggests that grossly incompetent students improved their ability to estimate their rank after minimal tutoring in the skills they had previously lacked, regardless of the improvement gained in skills. That makes sense, assuming that they're open to learning, since I'm sure many of them would assume they already had the skill. Continuing on. In 2003, Dunning and Joyce Ellinger, also of Cornell University, published a study that detailed a shift in people's views of themselves when influenced by external cues. Participants in the study, Cornell University undergraduates, were given tests of their knowledge of geography. Some of the tests were intended to affect their self-views positively, others negatively. They were then asked to rate their performance. Those given the positive tests reported significantly better performance than those given the negative. Daniel Ames and Laura Kamrath extended this work to sensitivity to others and subject perception of how sensitive they were. Research conducted by Brunson, 2006, set out to test one of the core hypotheses put forth by Kruger and Miller in their paper, unskilled, unaware, or both. The better than average heuristic and statistical regression predict errors in estimates of own performance. That people at all performance levels are equally poor at estimating their relative performance. To test this hypothesis, the authors investigated 3 different studies, which all manipulated the perceived difficulty of the tasks and hence participants' belief about their relative standing. The authors found that when researchers presented subjects with moderately difficult tasks, the best and worst performance varied little in their ability to accurately predict their performance. Additionally, they found that with more difficult tasks, the best performers were less accurate in predicting their performance than the worst performers. The authors concluded that these findings suggest that judges at all skill levels are subject to similar degrees of error. Ellinger, 2008, made an attempt to test alternative explanations, but came to conclusions that were quantitatively similar to the original work. The paper concluded that the root cause is that, in contrast to high performers, poor performers do not learn from feedback, suggesting a need to improve. Studies on the Dunning-Kruger effect tend to focus on American test subjects. A number of studies on East Asian subjects suggest that different social forces are at play in different cultures. For example, East Asians tend to underestimate their abilities and see underachievement as a chance to improve themselves and get along with others. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. That's pretty much the bulk of the Wikipedia entry. But isn't it interesting that they don't know how unskilled they are? They don't know that they're incompetent. And they tend to overestimate their abilities. The worse they are, the more they tend to overestimate their abilities. And the more skilled they are, the more likely they are to assume that other people have those skills, when in fact they don't. And wouldn't this explain a great deal, men, of your interacting with women in the workplace, in social settings, their presumption, and then their emotional outbursts, the males attempting to placate and to appease and to go along with the incompetent, this political correctness that you're supposed to go out of your way to take care of somebody who isn't taking care of themselves, that really needs to, develop a little bit of shame and a little bit of pride so that they can take care of themselves. But no, you're not even allowed to point these things out. So you've got a majority of the world's population that really does want to be taken care of. And if you tell them, hey, learn to clean yourself, they're like, how dare you, sir? How dare you suggest that, and it's like, no, really, learn to take care of yourself. Don't start an argument with me. I'm busy taking care of myself. Go take care of yourself. And they don't get it. You know what I mean? They want to come back. They want to say, no, you don't understand. It's like, no, I do. I understand. You want something from me, and I don't want to give it to you. I understand, and I'm not going to give it to you. And then there come, and then there's where the explanations begin. And it's quite an effect, And I wanted to talk about this concerning my previous video, because it's related to the previous video. This idea that women think they're so great and they're not even competent. Are women better cooks than men? They're not better chefs. The greatest chefs around the world are men. So you've got this performance differential between the men and the women, and it's vast. It's huge. It's so obvious. At the lower levels of work, no, maybe not so much. But at the higher levels of work, you can't even, it's absurd to even try to let them compete with each other. You can't in athletics. The women would of course, get hurt. It would be brutal. Nobody would do that. So why do the women think that it's any different in any other field? Why do they think it's different? It's not. The differential is there. At the lower levels, you're not going to recognize it. But at the higher levels, the woman is not designed to be as strong and capable as the man. Can some of them do it? Sure. Of course they can. Some women are really strong and everything like that. Good for them. But the majority of them, no. So why do I have to walk around and pretend like this, falsehood is true? I won't do it. Now, I don't get to have a corporate job either, or a government job. And that is not to say that everybody who does have a corporate job or a government job is kissing ass. I don't mean to say that. I just mean that I can't do it. I'm going to leave it at that for now. I figure that's plenty of stuff to talk about, even though, I'm just barely scratching the surface of the subject. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section below. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and join me again, Howard Dare, as I hope to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.